Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday night. I am so excited to be joined by my colleagues. So before we really get going with our topic for tonight, we invite you to grab some cozy blankets since it's so chilly this week. Grab whatever you need to be comfortable, and we'll be back in about 30 seconds. Back. We're so excited. This is going to be such a fun evening because I get to chat with my two colleagues. We've got Silvia and Adelicia here. Silvia, how are you doing this week?
Hey, how's it going, Carly? I'm doing well. Happy to be with you. I'm always excited to jump on with you. I don't get the opportunity very often. So just excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Silvia. And Adelicia, how are you? How's your week going?
Great. Super excited to be here as well. Just echoing everything that Silvia just said. And this is also, I'm excited to talk about this topic. Silvia and I have been doing a lot of work collaborating on this. So we're very much looking forward to our conference session.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both so much for being here. I am so pumped because number one, we've got the Multilingual Illinois Conference coming up already next week. Is it next week? Oh my goodness. I can't believe it. It's so exciting because we're going to be back in person, which is just I just feel like that's a big hug already because virtual is fun too, because you get to see everyone's names pop up, but seeing people face to face, that just brings me so much joy. So I am thrilled that we'll be back in person. So I want to kind of hop right in because lots to kind of chat about as we start to get ready for next week, where we're in person, we're seeing everybody, we're in the same spaces and places, and we're chatting about a lot of different topics that impact our communities that we serve, our multilingual students, their families, and kind of all of the things that fit underneath that large umbrella. So if you guys could tell us a little bit about when your session is, what your session is all about, and then maybe what are some kind of pieces of the session that folks might want to be listening for, tuning in for.
Sure, I can start up. Go ahead, Silvia.
Yes. Okay. I was going to say absolutely. No, I will echo what you said, Carly. I've been working at the IRC for a little over 10 years. So when COVID happened and we could not meet in person, it was a real shift for us. Coming back now, the last in-person conference that we had was in 2019. 2019. Yeah. So coming back in person for a multi-day conference seems like it's a little wild right now. I can't imagine. We did a 4-day conference when it used to be. Now it's a 3-day conference with kind of taking a step back a little bit, just because it almost feels like, oh my gosh, what are we doing back in person? But at the same time, I can't wait to see all the people, the energy that you get for in-person events. It's completely different. I like online learning. I like collaborating with my colleagues and friends online, but being in person, I think, just has a different vibe. The synergy that you get is, I think, even slightly different than it is in person. Even though you get energy online, the in-person energy is just a different vibe. So for me, first of all, I just can't wait to be back in person and seeing a lot of our old partners, right? A lot of our old exhibitors, sponsors. I'm so glad to see a lot of them come back also. So yeah, and just on those things, so excited to be back in person and get that energy, feed from each other and learn from each other. So yeah, I'll let Adelicia take a minute now.
Yes, everything that both of you have already said, right? And I also think that as a former bilingual educator myself, I feel like oftentimes I felt like I was on an island. And so it's really nice to get together with colleagues that share the same experiences, that share similar challenges, and to be able to just talk and connect with folks that have gone through similar experiences that I have.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you touched on that, because I have felt that way so many times. Like you're everybody's teammate in your school or in your district because you work with everybody in the system. But if you are one of only like 2 in your building, or maybe one of like 6 in your building, or maybe you're the only one, it can feel so isolating. So this is like, again, like the hub, right, for all of us to kind of come together and like share ideas and learn new things and meet new people and exchange, contact information with folks like that you're having a great conversation with. And I think one of the best things I think we can ask each other of, like, when we're at in-person conferences is, how does your district do this? Or how does your school do this? Like, we're all in the same spot now. Like, we can all have those dialogues in sessions, in between sessions, at lunch. Like, it's so nice. It's so, like, you feel a lot less alone in this work.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm not a practitioner, right? I think I always, whenever I do get an opportunity to come out and talk about the work that I do, I'm not a teacher by trade, but as kind of like as an administrator in a leadership role here, I'm always really curious to understand too, like how districts work. And in the work that Adelicia are currently, I collaborating on, the equity work, I'm finding that a lot of equity folk at the district level are also very much in that same boat with the sole EL teacher. They're like the sole person at the district taking on so much, right? Being the kind of being seen as like this expert. And even though they may be new even to that role, coming straight out of college, right? But those similarities, we can learn a lot from that. And from our point of view, like at the IRC doing this work, not every student is the same, not every district is the same, but there are similarities that we can learn from. And if someone's doing something really well, we want to know about that too. And we kind of want to run with it and, preach it to other people. Like, what's working at your district? Is it similar to my district? Here's what's not working also. Those are really wonderful learning opportunities that you get, I think, in person a lot. So
yes.
Mm-hmm. And Silvia, I think too, I'm glad that you brought up that point of equity work can also feel isolating. Yeah. And I think there's oftentimes the bilingual staff or the ESL staff are also the equity staff, yes. And so there's that crossover as well that can really just compound that feeling of isolation, right? If you're the only person feeling like you're the only person carrying that torch, for multilingual families, neurodiverse families, just it's a hard torch to carry sometimes. Yes. So I love that we're coming in person and we're able to support each other, just and network and share resources and share experiences, and sometimes just share the emotion of what it's like to be in that role.
Yes, that's huge. So you both have a session, and I'm so excited that you're doing this one together, because I look at both of you as such leaders, like thought leaders. Both of you always are such a great resource for me, like personally and professionally. Like, I appreciate being able to bounce ideas and considerations off of each of you. So I see you both as like huge leaders in this work. So tell us a little bit about your session, because I know a lot of folks watching are coming to the conference and they're looking at the huge menu of like all the different sessions happening. So tell us a little bit about maybe the title, when it is, some key pieces of your work, or you could also share like why did you feel drawn to create this session for folks coming to the conference?
You know what? I'm going to let Adelicia talk about kind of like our equity journey at the IRC. And then because that's really where it stems from. And then we'll get to like the sessions, the presentation title, because they're inevitably linked.
Perfect.
Sure. So, equity has always been something that's been in the forefront of my mind, because really in schools, it has to be, right? When you're talking about, specifically when working with multilingual families, immigrant families, oftentimes you see that there are barriers that our families face, right? And so I think that is always on the forefront of a lot of educators' minds who are in our types of positions, right? And so coming into the IRC, one of the things I really wanted to bring in was this National Seed Project. And I'm going to give them a plug right now, because it's just absolutely wonderful work in preparing and giving staff and giving even we're starting internally, right, at the IRC, and just looking at our organization and the changes that we can make. What are the enactable possibilities? And really being able to reflect and have conversations that oftentimes can be tense or that can be uncomfortable, but that really need to happen, right? You can't get into equity work without having those difficult conversations and having the tools to know how to navigate those conversations. Because in schools, I remember as a teacher and as an administrator, even not having the tools, but wanting to have the conversations, but then oftentimes the conversations go sideways, right? So we brought this seed project. Silvia and I are both seed facilitators into the IRC. And then also, as most of you know, the IRC is under a bigger center umbrella. And so we have other sister brother departments, right? That we're also inviting folks from those departments into this work. And so Silvia and I have had a lot of conversations about equity and social justice. We do a lot of planning for these seed meetings. And so we really wanted to do something to prepare and give some of these tools to schools and organizations as well. It's particularly because we started talking about the equity journey continuum. And I'm seeing that a lot of school staff, a lot of administrators are struggling with equity journey continuum and needing more information as to what do we do when there are moderate or large gaps in different student groups. And so that's where it all started. And then Silvia and I had conversations about, equity is not just what's in the classroom. It's not just about your curriculum. It's not just about your assessments. It's not just about your day-to-day teaching. It's structural, right? It's the systemic pieces that are larger than just what is happening with teachers. Oftentimes I feel that teachers get put on like any kind of hot topic there is. It's like, okay, teachers, you have to get on board. You have to get on board. But it's not just about the teachers, right? It has to be a community approach. And so Silvia and I talked about doing this session about, the title is Beyond the Classroom. And it's a systems-wide approach to creating a climate of equity throughout the school community. So we're looking at all of the different departments. What does the technology department have to do with the equity journey continuum? What does the human resources department have to do with the equity journey continuum? What does the school board? And what about the front desk, the registrar's office? What about the transportation and school buses? All of the business office. As a former administrator myself, I remember having conversations with all of these departments, because that's really where you're going to get change. You all have to work together to really build that equitable, those equitable practices.
Yeah. You said it beautifully, Adelicia. I don't know if I can add anything else. Other than we were really intentional in thinking about like not just having the equity piece in the classroom, right? We really wanted to look, as Adelicia said, systems wide. What is really happening with people at the district level that are making decisions, hiring decisions, for instance? What is happening in the front office, with with students, the alarming rates at which, you know, Black and brown students get expulsion or suspension rates. Like, who are the decision makers when those things happen? And could we, all of us, I think, can take a lesson and can benefit from maybe even having these conversations that maybe just a little peek into our own personal and internal biases that sometimes we don't recognize we have, you know? And so this presentation isn't just looking at, hey, here's equity for equity's sake, but it's really like trying to look internally. Are there thoughts? Are there things that sometimes you as a person at the district level or even in your own organization, right? There may be things that you just are not aware of, that talking having a conversation in a brave space, right, can really get at some of the things that we have internalized that we don't know. So, and to that end, we are looking at a systems-wide approach, and we are going to have examples and activities there where we, you know, will invite people to kind of take a minute and assess where you think you are in your equity journey and your beliefs around what equity means beyond the classroom.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So this is going to be a session really for everybody, like regardless of like where your school or district is or where your team is or where you are individually. This has like an entry point for everybody, every role, whether they're new to this work or they've been engaged in this work for a while. Because like one of the pieces I think that I've learned so much from both of you is like equity is a journey. It's not like it's not a destination. Like, are we ever going to find ourselves saying like, yep, we figured it all out. Like we have mapped it all out. We fixed all the wrongs. Like, no, like there's just always more work to do, right? Internally, externally, systematically. So I appreciate that this session is really looking at the full lens. And I think one of the things that you both have touched on is like in education, right? There's almost like departments or silos, right? Like the business office that Adelicia mentioned, like the transportation director, the this team versus this team and the social studies department. Like we all wear all of these different hats. But if we're just talking about equity work in pockets, right? How is that going to help our system grow forward? So I appreciate that this is really kind of that systems-wide, holistic approach to moving everything forward for kids.
And I think it really takes some of the onus out of the teacher's hands, because again, I think that oftentimes it's like, well, you know, we have these moderate gaps or these large gaps in our student populations, and our ELs aren't doing as well as these other students, or our children of color aren't doing as well in math or in the MAP testing, or, you know, our standardized scores aren't as good. And it always goes back to, okay, we're gonna change our lesson planning. We're gonna, you know, come together. We're gonna have coaches in the classrooms, and we're going to, you know, implement this new curriculum, right? But it's also looking at the larger picture, right? So if the students aren't in your classroom because there's a chronic absentee issue, why is that? What is going on? And it's not just, it's taking the onus off the students too, right? Because it's a community concern. It's a familial concern. So what barriers are families facing that may be affecting the students, right, in the classroom? Mm-hmm. And so it's really being able to take, you know, several steps back and really doing a bird's eye view of what's going on, and hopefully giving teachers some tools and some ideas to bring back to administration, to bring back to team meetings, to say, hey, let's pull this back and not just have this, you know, I think that oftentimes because we get so busy during the school year, it's we want to put band-aids on things. We want immediate solutions. And sometimes it's not about immediate solutions, right? Sometimes you really have to like have more of an action plan of how are we going to tackle this bigger issue. And yes, it might be affecting this one student this way, but really let's look at how it's affecting this group of students. How is it affecting the district? How is it affecting the community, right? And so hopefully participants will be leaving with some thoughts about enactable possibilities of how they can get these conversations started within their districts and for their students and families.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we will be talking about, and I think it's one of the most obvious, well, it's not always so obvious actually, is how much of ourselves and our identities we really need to bring into the equity piece. I think a lot of people don't like to acknowledge that, at least from like circles, they're just like, oh, equity piece is just like the successes and breaking down barriers. But it's really taking a look at like people's experiences and everything that like they've learned up to a point, given those experiences, right? And acknowledging that those people's experiences are so valid. And I think that when we're talking about equity, and social justice, right, it's really diving into, oh, I didn't know that you could not attend school or that you came to school so late because you have to catch 3 buses to get to school when you're just 14 years old, going to the other side of the, of the town to go to attend high school, for instance, at least that's the case for many CPS students. And people, and sometimes even educators, may not realize that this is why your student keeps coming late. This is why your student probably is saying, forget it. It takes me an hour and a half to 2 hours just to get to school. And I have to wake up at 5:30. Like, these are really hard things to ask for 14, teenagers, right? Just to put that example forward. But it is a barrier that we need to kind of like dig deep and call it out. This is a transportation barrier. This is an access barrier, access to education, that the student needs to travel for 2 hours to get some sort of quality education. That's a problem, and like what is in place that makes this happen for these students, and where can we break those down? So like having, our session is only an hour long. We don't obviously intend to like change the world, but if we can at least plant a seed to talk about, to start to actually acknowledge these problems, right? To start to even say, oh my gosh, I did not realize some students need to travel that long. Those are the kind of conversations that start those, the ball rolling and really understanding the issues a little bit more deeper.
Yes. I liked, Carly, that you mentioned earlier about conversations about equity happening in silos, right? Oftentimes, who is at the table when we talk about equity? Oftentimes it's teachers, administrators, but really, school board members sometimes. But really thinking about equity, we need to talk to custodians. We need to talk to people who are working in the lunchroom. We need to talk to bus drivers. We need to talk to the transportation coordinator, right? Who in the business office is running the free and reduced lunch forms? Who is giving out the iPads and to the tablets to families and to the students and troubleshooting issues? Who is greeting families at the door when they first come in to register and fill out the home language survey? Most of the time, those people are not at the table for these conversations, but it does impact them. So how can we bring those people in and help to inform them about how their role, it all comes together, right? It's all pieces of the puzzle, that if you're missing certain pieces or certain pieces aren't fitting well into that puzzle, you're not going to get a full picture, right? So it's just, I remember just for working in school districts, again, like you said, the business office, they're oftentimes doing the financial pieces, the budgets, they're running all of the registration fees and the tuition and, fees and graduation fees and free reduced lunch lists and things like that. And, oftentimes teachers, administrators aren't really thinking about how this process is affecting students and families and then learning, right? So really having those conversations and having those conversations directly with the staff that are doing those tasks, right?
Yes, yes. So I love that this session is so like it stretches across like the entire school ecosystem. Like I really think that is a piece that is almost missing from a lot of, you know, different places and spaces. Like it is a very siloed effort, and it's kind of like whoever feels most called or most driven to carry that torch, as you said, Adelicia. Like it almost is like whoever feels strongly about it will kind of step up and be like, hey, y'all, we should have these conversations. But and there's such power in that when, you know, the passion and the fire is behind it. But how do we create that bigger, broader climate of equity? So I cannot wait for this session. And it looks like we've got this session is going to be happening on the 7th, which is wonderful. It is in the afternoon at 1:45. So this is happening Thursday, December 7th at 1:45. The title is Beyond the Classroom, a systems-wide approach to creating a climate of equity throughout the school community. So Silvia and Adelicia, thank you both so much for hanging out with us tonight. We're so excited about this, and we get to see you all next week.
Thank you. See you all on Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you, Carly, for making time with Adelicia and I. You know, this is a really important work for all of us at the IRC. You know, Adelicia and I are kind of picking up the torch at the IRC, but it by no means is just our work. It is everyone's work. And we hope that it becomes everyone's work too in the school district. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
Hope to see you all there.
Bye.
Bye.